And welcome back to my channel. Unless you're new here, then just welcome. My name is Rusty, and this is my chat where I spotlight my favorite horror movies. Or movies, mostly horror. And my favorite music, mostly metal, sooner or later. And let's get silly and slapstick and really fun and talk about Here for Blood. This movie it's so. I had heard about this when it first came out. A friend of mine then saw it. It had like really limited theater release in February, I think it was, of 2024, and he was able to see it, and he told me about it, and he was like, "Oh my god!" But Here for Blood was released in February of 2024. It was actually filmed back in 22, I think, at the end of 22, but it was released in 2024 in the theaters on physical. It was directed by Daniel Turres. It was written by James Roberts, and it stars Shawn Roberts. And if you don't know who that is, then you must not be a Resident Evil fan, because he is the bad guy in the Resident Evil movies. He is Wesker in all of the Resident Evil movies. So, Shawn Roberts, Maya Misaljevic, and Joelle Farrow. Now, this movie opens up with a girl coming back, a college girl coming back from jogging. She goes into her house and can't find her roommate. And when she does, she finds her slashed up and dead in a shower. And then behind her, and I don't know what it is with these cultists in this movie, but they're all built like a brick shithouse, okay? I mean, and he's just wearing like a leather vest kind of thing, and he's got the bod, and you're like, what is that? And he's wearing some like face mask, creepy face mask. And he kills her pretty ugly. And then we're introduced to, the rest of the cast later, or the movie starts then. That's the intro. So we're then introduced to Phoebe and Elise and Mike studying in the lunchroom at college. And they're talking about how their first exam is coming up. But Phoebe has a very, very important babysitting job. She's working 3 jobs to get through college. And she's like paid a huge amount of money by this rich couple to watch their daughter, Grace. And so she's not going to be able to come over and study with Elise. And Elise was like, well, why don't you get your boyfriend to do it? And you hadn't seen him yet, so you don't know why she was reacting the way she was. But, she was like, my boyfriend, Tom? Babysit? And she's like, oh, it's nothing. She's like, okay, I'll do that. So then we're introduced to Tom, and he is like, it's not that he's an airhead, he's just what you expect. He is like a wrestler, and you see him in the wrestling ring. And I guess it is that WWE type wrestling, but it also kind of looks like MMA, kind of looks like UFC. But it's like more the regular wrestling. I don't know. I like EFC and MMA, but I don't do WWE things. So it's not my thing. But so he is like, oh my god. And so he comes home after getting his ass handed to him for $20. So they're not paid very well, obviously. And she breaks it to him. She's like, well, you love me. You're going to do it. I want you to babysit so I can go and study. And he's like, me? Babysit a kid? I don't know nothing about kids. So it's, you can see it setting up this like funny thing. So she calls Barb, and Gil and says that she's got a stand-in to do the babysitting job, and they agree. And then Tom goes and he shows up, and of course they're pretty like, what the fuck, when this big wrestling dude, is standing at the door going, "Hi, I'm the babysitter," and they take him up there and introduce him to Grace, and she's a really cool kid. And they give him pizza money, and they lay some cookies out for them, and they go out, so we'll be back by midnight, whatever. And so we get to see him trying to relate to this little smart ass. I guess what, she's about 8 or 9 years old. So we get to see her him trying to relate to this little girl, and it's got a lot of funny dialogue in it about that. But then he starts hearing noises, and we see the attic creak open, and these people come out of it, these masked things. They're like a cult is what it is. And so we get some of the most over-the-top wrestling, killing, slashing, fighting that you have ever seen. I mean, it is so over-the-top and fantastic. Because one of them goes and attacks her, and he's down there in the kitchen, and this one comes there, and he's, I'm trying to give you examples, like he grabs his head and he's puts it on the burner, the burner burns into his face. And of course they just show it to you and just hold it there. And the blood is ridiculous. That's why, what is it listed as? A dark comedy, slasher horror, supernatural comedy horror. Yeah, it's funny. And it is so over the top that it is not, and his one-liners and his jabs, he is so cool. He ends up going, he beats that one half to death. He goes and he gets the other one. And there's a big fight scene there. So there's lots of fighting and blood and gore. And then we sort of get the rest of the picture because, he's trying to figure out what the hell is going on. And who are these people? And at first he thinks they're pervs who want to kidnap her, and it isn't long before we're kind of let in on the secret, because he goes up into the attic to see where did they come from. And when he gets up there, it's like a giant ritual room, right? With this head, and Ouija boards and blood and sacrifice stuff everywhere. And he's like, what the fuck is that? What? And it's how could that go on in your attic and you not know yet? And that's when we're kind of introduced to the rest of the people. And that is, there's 4 other cult members who are out in the barn. And they're talking, they're all wearing the mask, and they're talking about, where is the girl, Well, okay, you two go. Get her. So, they want her for some kind of ritual, right? Meantime, a really funny part of the movie shows up with the pizza guy. He shows up, because they order pizza. And so the pizza guy shows up, and he's so ridiculously silly. And he knows him. He's a wrestling fan, so he knows him. And he's all excited, and he wants a picture with him. It's all really ridiculous. So that all takes place, and then the pizza guy leaves. But before he gets into his car, he notices somebody out there, and he gets out. And I'm like, you're dead. Really, really dead. And he goes up to him and is who are you, dude? I've been working on my guns. I got a friend in there. We'll take care of you and stuff like that. Well, the dude just he kills him really, really ugly. In this movie, they like to cut throats, but they don't just cut throats. He likes to grab them and pull their head back a little bit to really let their throats air out. You know what I'm saying? So the poor pizza guy, he got it, and he was like really cool. He was a dipshit hipster. No, not a hipster. Well, yeah, kind of hipster. Like a cross between a hipster and a hippie. He was smoking dope the whole time that he was bringing the pizza to them. So, but that was like really funny. So, unbeknownst to him, though, the pizza guy's been killed. Now, Elise and Mike and Phoebe, his girlfriend Phoebe, they show up. Like, they're through studying, so they show up. And they show up to this blood and mayhem all over the place. Mike freaks out and tries to leave in the car. The two girls are up on the porch, and they're, he's like, we gotta go. And they see. And see, I don't know what to call these guys, like to differentiate them. I had a problem with that, like when I was writing the notes, because nobody uses any names, right? So it's like the goof guy. I call one of them the goof boy. He was the one that had like got his face all burnt with the stove, the cooking eye. And then I call the other one like the bod boy, because he's the one with showing off his bod all the time. The crazy boy, the leader boy. I mean, what do you do? They don't use any names, so you have to describe them some way. But Bod Boy is in the back seat, and that was a brutal kill. Everything in this movie is like way over the top, like extreme gore, extreme blood. I've never seen so much blood in a movie in my life than is in this movie. And sort of like when he got stabbed in the foot by one of them, it's not that they just show you him getting stabbed in the foot and the knife getting pulled out and the blood spurting a couple of times. No, they focus on it and they show it like 10 times, and it's like, okay, we've seen the blood. But everything is like that. It's like, we're not going to just show you a little bit of blood. So, I guess that's why they call it Here for Blood, right? Possibly. But he kills the hell out of Mike. And, he's laying in the yard. That was like really uncomfortable murder, as, it's just like I said, it's so over the top that it can almost cause you anxiety to see someone stabbed that many times. It's like helter-skelter going off here. So they end up back in the house running. They're all trying to figure out what the hell's going on. You've got these cultists out there. They keep sort of like coming and going. You're introduced to more and more of that side of it. And one of the things that they do is, the leader, he's got this big portal that he's standing in front of, and that's where the ancient ones are. It's like a door to another hell dimension or something. And he uses the power, and it possesses the guy that he's got tied up, because he's got one of the cultists tied up there. And that was that ended up being like a fight from the dark side, because he's like possessed by this ancient one, so he's like really hard to kill. And Phoebe even gets in on this one, she chops his head like half off with the cleaver, trying to help Tom, who he may be a big thick wrestler, but that guy was whipping his ass. So once again, though, they continue to, of course, because that's what this is supposed to be, they do continue to make it through and win these fights, but it's at the cost of a lot of bones and a lot of blood. You know what I mean? So then, was that before Barb and them? Yeah. The scene right before Barb and Gil come back home, to parents, they try to come up with another plan, the cult, and they possess Mike. If we can't get in with our fists, we can get in with the heart, knowing that girl, Elise, is so upset about her boyfriend Mike being killed that if they can possess him, she'll open the door for him. And so they possess him, and he goes up there and let me in, let me in. And she is doing it. Now, Phoebe tries to stop her, but when you're in that kind of denial, you know what I mean? So she knocks her out the way, and she does open the door, and he gets in, and he rips her throat out. Well, it's not really him. He's dead. He's possessed. His body's possessed and reanimated. But so Mike rips her throat out. Very, of course, enough blood to paint the Sistine Chapel. And then it's right after they end up just beating him into oblivion and killing him again. It's not like any of these people stay dead. And that's what he says, that line somewhere in the movie. It's these people have a tough time staying dead around here. But Barb and Gil come in. And at first they act all shocked, what the hell's going on and where's our daughter and stuff like that. And Tom is trying to tell them, there's a bunch of shit in your attic, and these cultists are trying to get us. At first I thought they were perverts, but now there's some kind of witchcraft cult, and Barb and Gil start talking in a way that makes you go, what? And, because Barb starts saying crap well, we didn't mean it to be this complicated, I just thought you would eat the cookies and I had them drugged and you and Grace would be knocked out. And you're going, oh shit, Gil and Barb, the parents, are actually part of this. So that was a little shocking. And then you end up finding out the story, and that is that they are part of this cult. They have been sacrificing these college girls to the Ancient Ones so that they can ascend, which is that night, like all cults do. They're going to ascend and have eternal life with the supernatural gods. So they're going to do that, and they really, really need Phoebe, and they really, really need Grace to finish this ritual, which is going to let them ascend. And from that point on, it is a big, giant fight between everybody doing everything. There is so many different fights, because you remember he's got 4 of them out there, plus a couple that keep coming back to life. So it's one bloody, gory fight after another. And Dee Snider of Twisted Sister, he plays the voice of the Head, and that's the oldest one of their cult members, and nothing's left of him but from the bottom of his neck up, and he's always screaming, "Feed me." And he's actually used as a weapon a couple of times, because if you don't have nothing in your hand, grab the head and put it on somebody and it'll eat them. So it's quite interesting. But so you have all these huge fights, and this movie doesn't have a boss fight. This movie has 22 boss fights, and it definitely keeps you hopping from one fight to another. One big batch of gore. Don't eat. I'm just telling you, do not eat during this movie. Not even popcorn, okay? Because you're not going to be able to, unless you're a serial killer. But you're not going to be able to eat during this movie. Because that gory and bloody. So at the end, and the little girl is really cool, and he tells her to go get in the pizza guy's car and to wait 10 minutes and go get help. He's have you ever drove before? And she's well, no, my dad was trying to teach me, even though I'm too young. And he's like, well, you can figure it out. Just push that pedal and, go towards town. So, you have a bunch more boss fights. They do finally end up winning and dispatching the last leader into the portal, which seals it. And there's really good special effects. And everything except, of course, the lights of the portal are practical. Well, that's probably practical too. But there's no CGI in this movie, which is amazing considering how much gore and blood is in it. But I didn't notice any CGI at all. It's all practical. So you practical nuts will have fun with this movie. Because it's good practical at that. So everybody's dead except for Phoebe and Tom and Grace and her mom, Barb, whom they're going to turn into the police about all of this, and she's going to spend the rest of her life in prison. So they drive off, and then you see Goof Boy. And I knew that fucker wasn't dead. They should have went around and burnt all the bodies is what they should have done. But you see him at the, they drive off, and then at the very end you see Goof Boy. And he's walking with that head, and the head saying something like, well, it's always laughing. So it's like laughing, and he turns to the camera with these red glowing eyes, and you're like, shit ain't over yet. You only think this is done. And that's where the movie ends. And I will say that is some fun shit. This movie is pure fun. Now, I love him as Wesker because what an absolute, unabashed, unadulterated, unapologetic fanboy I am of Resident Evil. And Wesker is a big part of Resident Evil. Well, I think he's the most important part aside from her. Mila Jovovich. Is Mila Jovovich and Shawn Roberts. I mean, that's Resident Evil, is those two characters, Wesker and her. So he is very important to me, being such a fanboy of Resident Evil. And I am very, very glad to have, soon as I could find this on physical, I got it. So I'm really glad. He is a nice guy, and he plays a really cool dude in this movie. Cast is great. No bad acting. It's funny, darkly funny, but it is also so over the top gory and bloody that the Babysitter and the Babysitter 2, that I got that beautiful bootleg of, because they never released them on physical. Those movies are good and gory, but they're nothing, compared to this. But those movies, that's what this reminded me of, was The Babysitter. The vibe, the atmosphere of this movie reminds me of those two movies, even though they're nothing alike, and this movie is nothing but blood and gore, and but this reminded me of those movies, even though they're very different. So it's only the atmosphere and the vibes that you get from the movie, like 80s Babysitter kind of vibes. That's what you get from this movie. It's like an absolutely bloody, gory B movie from 1989, right on the cusp of the 90s. It's like that. So yeah, that was Here for Blood. If you like dark, silly, over the top, bloody, gory comedy horrors, this is definitely for you. I had a huge amount of fun with this, and yeah, Here for Blood 2024. This will definitely either be an honorable mention if it doesn't make my top list. It's according to how much of my top list I can find on physical and actually buy and own when I make my list, because I don't allow. If you don't release it on physical, I don't have it in my collection, it's not going on my list. It's just my thing. So, yes, that was Here for Blood. If you have seen this absolutely bloody mess of a movie, let me know what you think. And with that beautiful heavy metal soundtrack. And I will see you in the next video. We're going to finish it up with Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2, which I just watched a couple hours ago. And because I finished all 4 of these movies, I like to do that. I just have a marathon and then I do some videos on them. So I will see you in the next thing I do. Winnie the Pooh coming up. Love you, miss you, bye. Always remember, never forget, you are a very special person, and I will see you in the next. Ta-ta. Always check your attic. There could be some shit going on up there. You know what I'm saying?